apologize. I just want to confirm I'm the one in the light red color.
You are. And
Okay.
I had already hit the broadcast. So hello, everybody, and welcome to Cold Reads. It is Cold Reads, and it is, unscripted, well, kind of unscripted, because, no, it's not unscripted at all. It's just the first pass. But anyway, welcome. This is episode 15, and we are going to be reading chapter 11, part 2 of Stonebriar Casefiles. Ugh, I didn't do my nails. Oh, well. And I have with me tonight half of the illustrious cast from last night, and one person that you'll recognize from previous episodes, and a new person, which makes me excited. I will have everybody go down the line and introduce yourself, and I will start with Mr. Grappin.
Hi, everybody. I'm AF Grappin. I am the host, co-host, and producer of the Melting Podcast. I am also the author of Star Signs and the Deadly Studies series of novellas, book 4 of which has just come available for pre-order. So go to Amazon.
Yeah, do the thing.
Do the thing.
And next on my list is Chris Cree.
Hello, Chris Cree. I have done a lot of different voice acting for a lot of places, but mostly people will probably recognize me from Star Trek Outpost, which is now called Outpost, a Star Trek fan production.
Nice.
And I have written some audio productions in the past, which are now not totally active, but currently my brother and I are writing some scripts with a friend of ours for a project we hope to have animated and on YouTube in a year.
Awesome. That's exciting. And Mr. Ellis.
Hi, Paul Ellis. I've done voice work for Scott Roche, for myself. You can find me at paulkellis.com or out at wirelessadventures.com. And I'm just now jumping back into things after taking a year hiatus. So it's a lot of fun.
Very good.
It's been on my podcast, too.
Well, that's great. I have.
Mm-hmm.
I have not. Just saying.
We interviewed you on it, I think.
You got a tag from me on it.
Okay, so you have been on there, just no voice work.
Yeah. And last but not least, our beloved Miss Giguere.
Hi, I'm Veronica Giguere. I am a narrator and voice artist. I am the narrator, producer, and one of 4 co-authors of the Secret World Chronicle podcast novel series, written by Mercedes Lackey, Dennis Lee, Cody Martin, and me. And I help people tell stories for a living.
Yay! And so I'm going to go ahead and give a rundown of the cast since we have 2 new members. So last night we had Paul as our wonderful goblin Turek, and I think you did an amazing job. So I'm going to have you take that role again, and it is in green. Veronica, you did a wonderful Eric. It was very smooth operator. I really liked it. So you're doing it again. Gus, you are going to play Jack Haggerty, who was just introduced at the end of the last episode. He's about 19. He has run away from home, and he what's the best way to put this? He's done some really awful things thinking that they were the right things to do, such as murdering baby fairies.
Lovely.
Yeah. And he was doing that with the other character in this scene, Alina, who Chris will portray, and Alina's lines are in pink. Now, Veronica, I see your face and how shocked you are at this terrible crime.
I'm just thinking, Gus is too sweet to be murdering baby fairies, but then again.
Here's the thing. So
it's all the quiet ones,
So here's the thing. There was something put into motion when Beatrix Stonebriar came back to the Elderwood. She found 7 baby fairies in their tulip heads laid out on her doorstep. when she and Turek went to go investigate the crime scene, they noticed that the tulip heads that were cut were already kind of decayed. So they selected these fae knowing that they may not be the most healthy. They may not even make it. And so now we're just finding out who these people are. And so they're now being brought to the remaining members of the Watch, Eric, Turek, and Beatrix, for a little chat. So if you all will turn to page 3.
Real quick.
Yes.
Is Jack by chance Irish?
He is not. He is American.
Okay.
So yeah, your natural voice would do just fine. But if you want to put something else into it, that's fine too. A little scared, but kind of a tough guy at the same time.
Gotcha.
Okay. Any other questions from the rest of my cast? No? I'm going to take that as a no. Pardon. So let me go ahead and get to Sharon. And as I said, start with page 3 of your script. What? And we will share this to everyone. We shall freeze my screen. And I will go ahead and start. Actually, if we go right above where it says end episode. So I'm going to go a couple of lines before. So Gus, watch for your line, okay?
Roger.
And this is chapter 11, part 2. Nodris had found the girl. I looked up to Eric. When I brought out my moss agate from my pocket, he understood and went to go find the elusive Alina.
Where are you going?
Eric did not answer him, but closed the wooden door behind him.
Where is he going?
I want you and Alina here so that we can have a chat, I said, holding the boy with my gaze. Your father said you were on a quest to win the hand of an elf girl. I take it that girl is Alina? Jack nodded. And you know what your father has done? Jack nodded again. Thankfully, he must have learned obedience from his father, too. Too bad Jack Haggerty Sr. was a murderous bigot. Then why? I pleaded. Why on earth would you complete curses and spells that cause death? Not just any death, but the death of innocence. His words left him. I felt for the boy. He was confused, and all of his good intentions were leading him straight to the fiery depths of the underworld. Just then, the door opened again, and in came the girl, followed closely by Eric.
Alina!
He whispered.
You see, I told you that he is unharmed.
Eric guided her over to the chair and waited until she had taken a seat. I looked at her. Her liquid silver hair flowed like moonlight in a river. She was pretty and slightly flawed. I could see Jack's appeal. She was not highborn nor self-righteous. The phrase down to earth came to mind.
So, here we are, just the 5 of us.
Turek moved in front of the door.
And we are not leaving until we all know each other a little better.
He was using a tone that was a bit more menacing than I would have liked. Alina reached out and took Jack's hand. So, the feeling was mutual. At least she wasn't using him. Why don't we start at the top with introductions, I suggested. We went around the room with the formalities. That seemed to relax the kids a bit. Okay, that was the easy part. Now we get into new territory. You two might have trouble finding the words to answer my questions, so take your time, but know that all of us are excellent at spotting lies. Alina and Jack looked at each other for a long moment, and each nodded. Resignation never looked so sweet. Eric took a seat at the table from across the table from them and started the questioning.
So, what caused you both to come all the way to the Elder Wood? It is quite a hike after all.
The she-elf started.
We wanted to get married. Jack had done everything my father had asked of him in order to win his blessing, but he still wouldn't relent. We came to the human realm.
I nodded for her to continue. Jack picked up the story.
When we got to my father's house, he wasn't there. We found out what he had done, the murders and how he tried to kill you.
His fist clenched again.
I knew he didn't approve of Alina and I, but I never thought it would bring him to this.
I stopped him at that point. Your father already had a lot of apprehension and disgust for magics long before you found each other. He made that very clear when I joined the force. I thought that time had tempered him with me being assigned to work with him so often. No one could have known that he would commit those murders, and I doubt anyone could have stopped him.
You did.
He said. No, a team of police officers did. I just uncovered what he was doing. I decided that I wanted to stop that vein of discussion. What did you do after you found out your father wasn't there?
I knew Alina wanted a traditional elven wedding.
He said, looking lovingly into her eyes.
But until there was a truce between humans and magics, there was no way that anyone would accept our union.
What made you resort to spell work?
Eric asked. Alina spoke up then.
Diplomacy wasn't working. You both are on the front lines. You know that some people are never going to accept the integration of our worlds.
That's not entirely true.
Eric replied.
It depends on who you talk to and who weaves the story. If you look at it from the standpoint of the tabloids, then you will see how there is a riot or more every day all over the world. What you don't see are the stories of success. They aren't sensational enough to be covered in anything except some expert. They aren't sensational enough to be covered in anything except some excerpts that only a few look at. Even history shows of a successful integration of magics into human culture.
The young people raised their eyebrows. Have you ever wondered what happened to the dwarves? I asked. They shook their heads. Back in the old lands, they were the hardiest of people and could survive in colder places such as Scandinavia, Scotland, and so on. When humans started to populate those areas, the taller of the folk would make their way into society, and within a century, most of the population had been integrated. Granted, dwarves are the closest in resemblance to humans, but that was the start. Their tales were considered myth, but so vivid that they were passed down from generation to generation. Stories about us. Eric chimed in.
Whether or not they knew it, dwarves were the ones who started to prepare humans to eventually come to grips with our existence.
It had to be done. It has been done, but what we need to do is take the power away from the hate mongers, not feed them more fuel. I looked at them, trying to get a glimpse into their minds. I was no mind reader, but I could let them think I was. So, what caused you to look for spellcraft?
I thought that the best place to find the kind of magic for changing the world views of people would be to seek out the old magic here.
Alina said.
They don't have this kind of magic back where you are from?
Turek asked. She shook her head.
Our clan are nomads. Our ancestors did not like the way of their elders.
Sorry, that's an Eric line I didn't highlight.
Who does?
Eric mumbled. The girl didn't seem to hear him, so she continued.
When they left, they also disregarded their magic. My clan doesn't know much about the power they can wield. They have become ascetic. That is why we came here. I knew there was an alignment in the sky, and that if I knew what runes could affect change, I could find some ritual to help us bring peace.
Do you understand the words on the scrolls that you lifted from the library?
Eric asked.
I could make out the ingredients and the incantation to say.
The tears streaked down her face.
When it asked me to cut the tulips,
She sniffed, verging on breaking into a full-blown wail.
I couldn't do it. Jack did it for me.
I turned to Jack. And you chose the buds that looked more decayed than the others. He gave a silent nod. So why leave the buds for me to find?
The scroll said, "Place on the altar for the instrument of change." We thought that you would bring the change. I'm sorry.
He said. Sorry won't bring those younglings back. Sorry won't dispel the fear and animosity that this attack has incurred. I seethed with anger at their lack of consideration. You should know better than to sneak around and fool with powers that you don't know how to use or what they are for. You're adults.
Where are the scrolls you took from Silver Bark?
Asked Turek. The elf girl jumped as though she had forgotten he was standing behind them at the door. After a moment, she rifled in her bag and took out the 2 scrolls. They didn't look any worse for wear, despite being at the bottom of her bag. No doubt the records keeper back in the Silver Bark would find several hundred alterations on the ancient papers. Eric unfurled them. One was the spell of Abyss that we were expecting. The other was a spell I didn't recognize. It read Derir Trirun, and by the look on Eric's face, it could not be good. Wide-eyed, he looked up at the 2 youngsters before us.
Did you also put this spell into place?
Alina cast her eyes downward.
The potion is brewing right now.
That doesn't leave us much time. You have to show us where.
Eric said.
Why? I thought I was going to...
Alina started.
The translation means conform through ruin. If we do not stop it now, it could turn the whole forest against itself and its residents,
said Eric. Jack stood up sharply, his chair clattering on the floor behind him. Before he could open his mouth to speak, Alina's hand was on his. She said nothing, but her eyes welled with tears.
What have I done?
I stood and let my wings warm up before letting them lift into the air. All right, you 2. Where did you leave it to brew?
At your tree.
Jack said. I didn't have to yell or perform any kind of violence. My ever-present light burned scarlet. Turek had the door open for me before I made a hole through it. Leading the way, we began the trek back to my home, the Stonebriar. Bow, bow, bow. Yay!
Woohoo!
So that was chapter 11. You guys are awesome, by the way. At keeping up with everything. It's so good. It's so good. So yeah, this is I really like having other people to do the voices because me going back and forth is a little challenging. Doing a straight read. Chris, what'd you think?
That was kind of terrifying, but super exciting and awesome.
You did amazing.
Yeah.
It shows that you've done a lot of voice work because you got all the intonations really well.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
And Gus, you did this really well.
Thank
You're,
you.
you're
I had a
great
great Alina to play off of.
You're great at being an angsty teenager.
I have no experience with that, and I'm totally not convinced I'm still 19. I just turned 33. I'm convinced I'm still 19.
Aren't we all though?
I'm baby-faced, though. I kind of pass as 19.
Lucky. So anyway,
I'm over here thinking 33. You are 19.
I may be the baby out of all of you, so
Aww.
I turned 32 on the 6th.
Aww.
Hey,
So just
Happy
barely.
birthday.
you share a
you just-
birthday with my middleest child.
Yay!
You're
So
only
yeah,
a year and 5 days younger than me.
I'm probably going to do a birthday podcast of some kind. But by then I will have news stories, hopefully. I do have a short story started of how Jack and Alina met. But it's really nice to be like, yay, now you guys get to see who the people are who did this thing and see that they're actually really relatable and stupid. They're stupid kids.
Oh,
What are you gonna do, right?
yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have any notes or anything in this episode that they wanted to just like comment on or anything? Anything that was difficult or challenging?
I'm getting the sense that Turek is kind of the muscle.
Turk is totally the muscle, and I wish I would have had you before because he had a point a chapter or two ago where he kind of jumped in and did the whole thinking things through, and I think he's going to come back again in a couple of chapters. I don't have the spreadsheet, but there's a chapter where it's just him and Beatrix chatting, and they're both really beat up. So maybe we'll have you back for the ad.
That'll be great.
For the record, that voice is the one that he did on the Melting podcast. So Turek apparently has been on the podcast.
That's amazing.
I've got two voices. I
And-
do both.
Well, I can do that voice too, just FYI.
So can I.
That's awesome.
I think we're all with this voice when we're just making silly voices.
No, it's
That's how the fairy.
all in inhaling helium.
I can do that voice too.
Yeah, see? Everybody do the Stitch voice. Oh man. So let's talk really quick. How did you guys all get into voice acting?
I volunteered for people, and they liked it, and they kept sending me things to do, and I have a hard time saying no.
Well, you should learn.
Maybe.
I do too. I know the feeling. Paul?
My first career was in broadcasting. So I was in radio and television for about 15 years.
Awesome.
So doing a cold read live on the air in front of a bunch of people, that gets you over any sort of performance anxiety in a hurry because you don't have time to worry about, whether or not you sound foolish. You just go with you do, and everybody's going to have a good time.
Yeah.
That's I started way back when. And then I guess about 4 or 5 years ago, I picked it back up again. And I don't even recall how, but I had been messaging Scott Roche back and forth. He goes, "Hey, I've got something if you want to do a cold read on it." And I'm like, "Great, that'll be fun." And that kicked it back up again. So.
Nice. Was it his Archangel project?
It was his Tales from the Grim Reader.
Oh.
Yeah. So that was, I think, the inaugural thing that kicked me back into doing voice work.
Cool. How about you, Chris?
I kind of came about it in a roundabout way. My sister-in-law is a self-employed type person and had like a business meetup thing with a fella named Nick Armstrong, and my brother and I happened to go, and we were talking about writing because that's what my brother and I typically do. And Nick said, "Hey, I belong to this production company. It's Giant Gnome Productions. We do audio dramas." And we got involved. He's like, "Hey, we could use some more voices on the show." And
Oh,
so
I remember Giant Gnome. That must be how we met.
so it was like, oh, okay. So we just thought of it as a way to kind of get our foot in the door and maybe write some stories to have produced. And it just became this whole acting thing. We were like, oh, this is fun. Let's just do that. So, yeah.
Sorry, I had a quick visitor. That was the kilted man in the background, if anybody saw. And Gus, how'd you get started?
It was something I always wanted to do as a kid, and I acted on stage from like age, I don't know, 14 or 15. But I never got into voice acting, and then finally I started listening to podcasts, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to actually make myself a voice actor. So I started the podcast, and
now you're here.
Everywhere. I'm everywhere. Yeah.
This is the Munchkin.
This
is the official mascot of this podcast. I have decided.
No.
She's my baby. So it is about that time where we go around and let you all tell people where they can find you online. We will start with Miss Giguere.
You can find me online at www.voicesbyveronica.com or at www.secretworldchronicle.com or Voices by Veronica on Facebook and V for Voice on Twitter.
Fantastic. Mr. Ellis?
You can find me at paulkellis.com, where I'm a storyteller, maker, and unrepentant nerd. Also, you can find me at www.wirelessadventures, all the thrills with no strings attached. So, and on Facebook at Paul K. Ellis Author, also Twitter at WAdvents. So,
yes, and Chris.
You can find me doing lots of different parts for Giant Gnome at giantgnome.com. And you can find me on Facebook as Chris Sci-Fi Cree.
Awesome. And last but not least, Mr. Grappin.
You can find me at afgrappin.com. And Twitter at afgrappin, pretty much anything afgrappin you can find me, and also the meltingpotcast.com. That's podcast with a T.
And if these links are not in the show notes, they will be shortly. I want to thank all of my guests for being on the show. I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your evenings to come and be with me. Tomorrow night, I am not sure who's on tomorrow night, but I will figure that out and I will let you all know because I'm totally on the ball. I think we're going to have Marley Norton on, who I have not spoken to in a couple years, even though she lives 2 hours from me. But we'll see who we can get back on for tomorrow. If you would like to find me online, you can go to resonantmoon.com. That is the production. That is the company that sponsors us. That is my company where I take care of all of your audiobook and podcasting needs. I will edit. I will QC. I just won't record any new narration projects because I am book solid for that. If you would like spoilers for Stonebriar Casefiles Bad Alchemy, which is what we are currently reading from, you can find it on Amazon. The link is in the show notes. If you would like to be on Cold Reads as a voice actor, or if you would like to submit a short story, you can go ahead and send me an email. Laura Nicole Audio at gmail.com. That is LauraNicole audio at gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at LNicoleAudio. tomorrow is Thursday, so after Cold Reads, it's going to be all about Critical Role because it's my favorite show on the internet. This show is covered under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 international license. That means you can download the show, you can share it, you can repost it, just don't edit it because it's perfect the way it is, just like you. And make sure that you link back to this YouTube page. I will do another happy dance if I get to 20 subscribers. So please subscribe. Go ahead and click that lovely subscribe button. And thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to my wonderful cast. And we will see you tomorrow, 8:30 Eastern, for Chapter 12 of Stonebriar Casefiles. Say goodnight, everybody.
Good night,
Good night,
everyone.
Everybody.